We'll now move back to agenda item 37. Item 37 is a public hearing regarding an application for a planned development sub-district for MF-2 multiple family uses on property on the west line of Carlisle Street between North Hall Street and Bowen Street.
Mr. Mayor, we sent 948 notices to property owners within 500 feet of the area of request. We received 157 replies in favor and 698 in opposition. Due to denial by the CPC and the opposition of owners of more than 20% of the land within 200 feet of the area of request, this will require a three-quarter vote to approve.
CPC recommends denial without prejudice. Are there any individuals in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to the denial? Please come forward. Okay.
This is folks that are opposing the denial. Okay. Thank you. All right. We got it.
Are there any speakers
in
opposition?
Is it just these folks? Is it just these two that are speaking, or is anybody else? We've got one more.
Yes.
You got two speaking in opposing the denial.
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
Show of hands, who's going to speak on that? One more, two more. Thank you. Okay. Good to see you, Ms. Hunt.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. It's good to be here. Good evening, members of the council. I'm Angela Hunt. I represent Lincoln Property Company. I'm with Munchart, 500 North Ackard Street. Lincoln is proposing a multifamily development that will require rezoning in the heart of Uptown. The site is located on the Katy Trail. You can see it there. It's on Carlisle Street. It's between Hall and Bowen, and if you look at the image, you can see that it's surrounded by various types of development. We have a 5-story development just to the north of the site, 3 stories directly opposite on Carlisle Street. You'll see the 17-story Taylor project. It's catty corner from the site, and then just to the south of the site, you'll see the Monaco. It's 6 stories. This project, if you'll go to the next slide, is proposing 307 units. It would be 2 buildings separated into 2 buildings along the block. If you'll turn that towards me just a little bit and go back. Thank you. It's 5 and 6 stories, 70 feet in height. There are affordable units, which are part of the project. We'd have walk-up units on Carlisle and Hall Street. Walk-up units are not required as part of the current zoning. All the parking would be either underground or wrapped by units. There would be two new public entries that Lincoln has committed to constructing to the Katy Trail. There would be a public promenade connecting Carlisle Street to the Katy Trail for pedestrians. All the power lines that are on Carlisle and Bowen Street would be buried. This would allow the introduction of parkway trees along Carlisle Street and Bowen Street, which we don't have today. This project, as you'll see in a minute, fits the density and the character of the neighborhood, and it would be a $110 million investment compared to the $25 million investment there today. It is currently 1960s apartments that are in deteriorating condition. This gives you an idea of what the project is proposed. You can see on the right-hand side, those 2 images are the back of the project. Some of the feedback, and we'll get into that in a minute, was that this project did not engage with the Katy Trail. You can see this project now, after revisions from the architects in Lincoln, engages fully with the Katy Trail. It has walk-up units all along the rear of the project. I don't think this is our time. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, that's your time.
Do we not have 15 minutes per side?
No, I don't know who's on this. I keep on talking. We'll try to figure it out.
So this is the project that was originally proposed. This was originally approved by the Oaklawn Committee in February of this year. It is a single building that runs along the entirety of the block with a fire lane along the entire back of the project. This was entirely revised based on the community input we got over the course of the last 3 years. Lincoln has had considerable input from the community, as you can see by this list. As a result of the community input, the project has gone from 90 feet to 70 feet, 390 units to 307 units. There's an urban form setback from Carlisle, which means that it is tiered so that you have a setback on the first floor and then a further setback above that. The fire lane on the back of the project has been fully eliminated and wrapped with units. The garage that you saw on the back of the building originally has been completely wrapped with units. You do not any longer see the garage on any part of the building, on any side, except when you're actually entering it. The loading docks were moved internally to the building rather than having them on the fire lane out in the open on the Katy Trail. They're now internal to the building and gated, so you won't see those either. At the request of neighbors, bike parking was added, wider sidewalks were added, the power lines were buried, pedestrian entry points were added. We heard that there were 3 major issues with the project. Back in July, a representative from opponents to the project, Lincoln took 2 months and completely redesigned this project in response to the issues that we heard. And Mr. Mayor, if I could have 3 more minutes to complete this.
Well, let me folks that will be speaking in favor of the item, the recommendation to deny, show of hands. In favor, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? And we've got 3 other folks, so take 2 more minutes, okay? And then we'll give these other guys 5 minutes, okay? If you can do that. Is that all right?
I might take a couple of minutes of your time. They're fine with speaking 1 minute each,
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
all right, then that's good.
Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So here are the major issues that we heard. 1, that this building was monolithic. It spanned the entirety of the block and needed it to be broken up. 2, that there was a fire lane against the Katy Trail instead of directly engaging with the trail with green space and units. 3, that there was an above-ground parking garage that faced the trail. Each and every one of those issues has been totally addressed. 2nd, lack of pedestrian access from the street and the building to the Katy Trail. In the PD, you'll see language requiring pedestrian access from each part of the buildings. And lastly, the loss of neighborhood character, views, and the environment. As we'll see on one of the next slides, this fits within the character of the neighborhood and the current built environment. This is a document that was distributed by opponents to the project talking about what they wanted to see. And if you'll look on the right-hand side, you'll see a yellow block around a drawing. This was one of the drawings that was shown as an example of what should go on the site instead of what Lincoln had originally proposed. And if you'll look here, what you'll see is an enlargement of that design. If you look in the lower part, that is Lincoln's new design. It is nearly identical, but it's actually better. In Lincoln's design, not only are there 2 entry points to the Katy Trail, which was requested in the document that the opponents distributed in August. In addition to that, there are units that line the Katy Trail. Those weren't in the original design that's shown in the upper left-hand corner. The promenade that's created has wide sidewalks to allow pedestrian access, public access to the Katy Trail. This is the environment that this project is proposed to be built in. I want to point out 2 things. One is the number of stories for these different projects that are right around here, and also the density. A point has been made that this project is too dense. This project balances the density of the lower intensity units, like the 3-story typical multifamily, with some of the higher intensity projects that are right around this project. If you'll look, you'll see post-Katy Trail, it's 5 and 6 stories today. It has 99 units an acre. If you look at the Renaissance, it's got 3 towers. It's right down the street on Hall Street, 22 stories and 17 stories, and it's 173 units an acre. Just south of the site's the Monaco, 147 units an acre, and then the Taylor has 182 units an acre. Lincoln's proposing 81 units per acre. Traffic impact is minimal. That was confirmed by 2 separate traffic engineering firms, as well as the city's traffic engineer. It's been challenging to work through some of the misinformation that's been on the street on this project. We've heard that the building is 10 stories tall and it's 110 feet tall, neither of which is true. It's 6 stories and 70 feet tall. That the parking garage is above ground. The parking garage is entirely wrapped and also below grade. We've heard that Lincoln is seeking tens of millions of dollars in city subsidies. Lincoln is seeking $0 in city subsidies for this economic project. Lastly, there was a flyer distributed to residents that was clearly intended to appear to be a city flyer, and it contains misinformation. So let's talk about the facts. Here's the zoning request. Increasing the height from 36 feet to 70 feet, from 3 stories to 6, lot coverage from 60% to 70%, increasing the maximum units to 307, burying the power lines, wrapping the parking garage, and most importantly, Lincoln had committed to 5% affordable. That would be 15 units. Lincoln is prepared to support 15% affordable housing units for 15 years. Let's put that in numbers. That's 46 units. 46 units. Now, when we compare that to what's there today with 115 units, it replaces 40% of the units that are there today with affordable units. It's a remarkable concession that they've come to the table with. So we're asking today, Mr. Mayor, that Lincoln be approved for the applicant's request with the addition of 15% affordable for 15 years, and we'll sit down for questions. We'd like to reserve any time we might have for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Next speaker in opposition.
I'll take Ms. Hunt at her word and give you a minute.
1 minute. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Leland Burke. I live at 5311 Park Lane in Dallas, and I represent the ownership of a number of properties in PD 193. I'm here today to speak in favor of the zoning request in my individual capacity. I believe the zoning request should be approved for the following reasons. The proposed height of 5 and 6 stories clearly fits the context of the neighborhood. The traffic is not significantly impacted, as demonstrated by the DeSajo study and is confirmed by the peer review study. The project fully integrates with the Katy Trail and provides 2 new public entrances at the developer's sole cost. The developer is providing underground power lines on Carlisle, wider sidewalks, and walk-up units, which all make the project more walkable than is required by a by-right project. This is a dense area, and a modest increase in density is appropriate. Lastly, I applaud Lincoln for adding the needed affordable housing component to this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Next speaker in opposition.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Francisco Medrano. I reside at 3203 Carlisle Street. No relation to Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, full disclosure. Just want to voice my in favor of this project. I am the Homeowner Association president, though I speak on my behalf only. From my vantage point at the corner of where I live at Carlisle and Bowen, I look up to see the Taylor, which is within a rock's throw of my residence, and there are 17 stories, and they looked down upon, not us figuratively, but literally, and to the Vine next door across the street. The project that the Katy Trail project is from Lincoln is a very good project. It's gone through many iterations, and given the support gone through the many iterations with the input from the community, and they've each one of their plans has been an improvement, and they've worked tirelessly to address the concerns of the community, and for those reasons, I think that it's an improvement.
Thank you. We'll take the folks that are for the recommendation of denial. Excuse me?
May we hear from Jeff for just 1 minute, please, Mr. Mayor? I thought he was going to speak as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there were only 2 that raised their hand.
Or John, either way.
Thank you, Mr.
Please.
Mayor. I'm John Beasley, and I reside at 3215 Carlisle Street, number 118, in Uptown Dallas, and have been there for the past 12 years. As a member of the Board of Directors of the Turtle Creek Terrace Homeowners Association, I represent a supermajority of property owners who support the Lincoln Katy Trail project. For nearly 3 years, my fellow owners at Turtle Creek Terrace have closely followed Lincoln's plans to redevelop the place we call home. The project has gone through many changes, and these changes represent neighbors along the Katy Trail their needs, their wants, and there's an ever-changing, vibrant uptown. Indeed, the ownership has met with Lincoln multiple times to understand how these changes will enhance the neighborhood with a minimum of impact to our neighbors. We are pleased that Lincoln has included an affordable housing initiative in their plan, and I will definitely invest and relocate in that same neighborhood. Today, a supermajority of the homeowners at Turtle Creek Terrace asked the City Council to approve Lincoln Katy Trail as presented tonight. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if I think there were 9 hands of those, please come on down. We'll take. I'll ask security to take this, whatever it's called, away. Ma'am? Yeah, wall. We'll do a couple of minutes apiece. Okay? 2 minutes apiece. Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the Dallas City Council. My name is David Hairston. I have been a resident of 3215 Carlisle Street, the property in question, for over 11 years. The question is, why are we here? The Dallas Development Code requires 100% of the people that live on a property agree to an application for rezoning. Now, our president of the HOA made the decision to allow Lincoln to put forth this application. This is a stable and diverse neighborhood. Everybody works and pays taxes. Nobody's getting any subsidies. We're going backwards when we're talking about affordable housing. Everybody that lives there, again, as I mentioned, works hard. If this were to go through, there will be a simultaneous closing with the termination of the condominium. We have to be out by February. And at that point, Lincoln Properties can enter your property without notice. And I've spent $6,000 in attorney fees. And I understand from my attorneys that I can be removed, my family can be removed by the sheriff's department, and that's at gunpoint. So after that, you got forced arbitration. If you want to fight this thing, the chances of winning will put us in bankruptcy. This is very serious to the people that own and have a homestead at Turtle Creek Terrace condominiums.
Thank you.
Next speaker in favor.
Sue Kreider on behalf of the Oak Lawn Committee. At the most, after they revised their plan, Lincoln did come back to the Oak Lawn Committee, and at that time, the Oak Lawn Committee voted to not support their plan. They take very seriously neighborhood input, and also the fact that the land use currently is MF2, and they cannot support the increase in the density. There's plenty of other places for them to build where they won't have to have a change in the zoning. So we ask your support of the Oak Lawn Committee as well as the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Why didn't somebody else speak while you get that ready?
Hi, my name is Steve Metzger. I live at the Mayfair 3401 Lee Parkway. Thank you for letting me spend some time here. I think we've heard a lot of discussion about redesign. My issue is that it violates the zoning and the Oak Lawn plan from the very beginning, so no amount of redesign is going to fix it. I think if it were done within MF2, we would all support it, even slight changes. But in our opinion, there's just no reason to change the zoning to accommodate this project. If it doesn't fit their profitability metrics, we're all business people, we get that. That's okay. They should find another site. So I think in order to stay within the confines and the feel of the neighborhood, which is a phenomenal area, they should stay within MF2. And again, they get a whole lot more support. So I would ask that we do not allow this project to go forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next. Whoever's next there.
Good evening. I'm Al Chapman. I live at 3235 Cole Avenue, number 45. I'm the president of the Woodshire Court Homeowners Association. Been there 15 years now, and I got to say it's a great neighborhood. It's been a great neighborhood, even without Lincoln somehow. I'll just give you the short version of it because I only got a little bit of time. But the fact is, over 2/3 of the responses received were in opposition to this. And if anything, that understates the case. There are a number of people who, because of professional consideration or professional courtesy, would not respond with their opposition. But it's gotten back to us that, hey, I hope this thing goes down, but I can't go on the record opposing it because it's my job. So the short version is this. Staff has recommended denial. CPC has recommended denial. And the reason they recommended denial was because this project is fundamentally incompatible with adjacent low-rise multifamily land uses in density, scale, height, and the character of the neighborhood. This will create much higher density by significantly increasing the number of apartment units that can be built compared to what's in the current zoning. This higher density would definitely create more traffic on already crowded streets, and it would really hurt the street parking. Building heights would be out of scale. They talk about stories, but we all know code is written to feet of height, not to stories, because you can always jiggle the numbers on stories. So in summary, the current MF2 zoning is the most appropriate zoning for the neighborhood. Our low-rise neighborhood works well as it is. That's why I and everyone up here has made our homes here. It's not just an investment, it's a home, and there's a big difference there. On behalf of the coalition and myself, I respectfully ask you to deny this, and I'd even ask for it with prejudice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Ma'am.
I'll make this quick. Are we up there yet?
Isn't it working? Go.
Here we are.
There it is. Go ahead.
My name is Amanda Popkin. I live at 2519 Catherine Street. The bottom line for this project is that it's not appropriate for this site, as you've heard. Our city is striving to create rich, diverse, thriving neighborhoods, and we have come together to plan our neighborhoods with Forward Dallas, the Oak Lawn Plan, and so many others. And if these are to be our guiding documents, they must have some staying power to be worth anything. As stated in previous upzoning case for a parcel in this MF2 neighborhood, that there's a reason we have zoning so that residents can have some certainty as to what the future of the community will look like. Over the past 2.5 years, this project has been extremely expensive in terms of our most valuable resource, our citizens' time and attention, volunteering to be engaged in important matters like this, zoning cases that affect everyday experiences in their neighborhood. As realtors know, people buy a neighborhood. They don't buy a home. Case in point, 2/3 of PD 193 is a landscape plan. It's the reason Oak Lawn is such a great place. It's the space between the buildings that matters the most. We need diversity in our neighborhoods, and this is only one of 2 protected MF2 areas in Uptown, the other being in the State Thomas area. In these 26 acres here, there are 45 individual 2- and 3-story buildings directly adjacent to this site in a variety of ages and architectural styles. In 2007, a similar Gables property rezoning proposal just across Hall Street was denied with prejudice by council, and because of this, residents have made sizable investments based on the certainty of the zoning being upheld. The parcels outlined in green here are all underdeveloped sites with the existing density rights to build what Lincoln has proposed. They could easily build on any of these. There is no need to begin this domino effect of upzoning this protected MF2 neighborhood. This is a stable, primarily owner-occupied neighborhood with some of the last remaining naturally occurring affordable workforce housing in one of Dallas's most expensive neighborhoods. Although this project promises to retain 46 affordable units, as we just heard, for only 15 years, we will have a net loss of 69 affordable units here. There have been no rescinded letters of opposition. I'll speed through this as quickly as I can.
No, we're done. Thanks. I've tried to give everybody a couple minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Bob Griffo. I reside at 3834 Bowser Avenue. I've lived in the Oak Lawn area since 1991. Previously, I lived in Washington, D.C. One of the things in Washington, D.C. where I lived is it became a canyon. The development density was such that we had high buildings on both sides of the streets, and it really was like living downtown instead of a residential neighborhood. I'm speaking now. I don't live adjacent to this. I previously lived, before I bought my current townhome, I previously lived near the current project that's being discussed. And one of the things that I've noticed is since 1991, when I moved here, there was very little activity in terms of real estate development in the Oak Lawn area for a variety of reasons. And primarily the development that did occur in the early years was all townhome developments. And people were in the MF2 and people were building townhouses because the land was more affordable in the MF2 areas. And now that it's a more popular area, now people are trying to force changes. And we need to respect the zoning for the area in Oak Lawn. And there are plenty of MF3 properties that would permit projects of this size in Oak Lawn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is James Genova. I live at 3401 Lee Parkway. And I don't want to repeat much of what you've already heard about respect for current zoning. I want to mention how many of my fellow residents have been involved and engaged with emails to the CPC, emails to City Council. You've looked for engagement from the neighborhood. You've gotten engagement from the neighborhood, clear and unambiguous, against changing rezoning. We bought here for MF2, keep it MF2. If you want MF3, walk across Turtle Creek and develop right there. So thank you for your time, and please respect the time of all the residents who came forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good evening. I'm Dan Halliburton. I live at 3030 McKinney Avenue. It's the Latour Condominium Complex, and I'm on the board of directors. Thank you for an opportunity to just underscore a few things that you've been hearing here tonight. Latour was one of the first significant residential developments in Uptown, and its owners have collectively made roughly a $70 million investment. And we did that counting on the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood that exists today. And although the residents of Latour generally support context-sensitive development, we just don't feel that this complex meets the criteria that we need to see and what we're depending on for the very unique nature of Oak Lawn and of Turtle Creek and Uptown. So we'd like for you to vote against this proposal. We think that the current zoning is appropriate for this location, and thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Tracy Popkin. I live at 301 Melba Street. I don't live in this area. I got involved because I have friends who live directly adjacent to this project, and I've been working with Amanda Popkin and community engagement, trying to pull together all the opposition for hundreds of people with various different reasons to oppose this, trying to coalesce them into one voice. Because I've been a part of other development issues like this in my home neighborhood in Bishop Arts, so I know what it's like to be pro-development and want to work with a developer and have that back and forth to see actual compromise occur, which is not really what's occurred in this instance. So I did have the really deeply impactful experience recently of being a member of the community steering committee for the City of Dallas Economic Development Plan. And as part of that experience, the Angelou Economics, who was paid an enormous amount of money to give you all advice, said that one of the primary issues with the City of Dallas is that we don't have an overarching plan that we stick to. And as part of being part of this process, I rode with the CPC on their bus to tour this project and numerous other projects. I saw the whole city basically in one day, and when you enter Oak Lawn, you can see the effect of 30 years of a cohesive plan that's been stuck to. It's stunning, and it's incredibly valuable. So as an outsider who's been involved in this for a while and cares deeply about this city, this is an example of we have a plan that's working, and community members who've invested deeply in making this plan follow through and be enormously valuable. And I think we should continue to support the Oak Lawn plan and support projects that understand and support the goals of the neighborhood and the vision of the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Next
Thank you. There's none of these folks, right? You've all spoken? Yeah, thank you. Entertain a motion, Mr. Kingston.
Move for denial without prejudice.
Okay. Do we have a second? We've got a second. Discussion, Mr. Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for coming down here. This project has, because of the length of time that it has taken, and because of the way that we view land use, and especially proposals to change land use within PD 193, there has been an extraordinary amount of volunteer effort expended on this project. And that is the primary reason, along with the secondary reason being the overwhelming level of opposition, that I'm not willing to further drag out this case or to try to send it back for some, essentially would be about the fourth major revision if we tried to revise it again. The lesson from this exercise is that this parcel, for whatever reason, we can disagree about the reasons, and we do, is not appropriate at this time for greater density. By way of background, deals that have occurred in Ms. Gates' district, in my district, in Mr. Medrano's district, sometimes are known as assemblage deals, typically when condominiums or townhouse developments with diverse ownership are sought to be redeveloped. It's an incredibly difficult process to pull together enough support within the diverse ownership of the property to accept a sale to a developer. That was accomplished in this case by two things that I think should give us pause when we're looking at assemblage deals in the future. One is that this condominium association adopted as its rules that no bulk sale of the property could ever be accomplished without 100% participation from the condo owners. That was not achieved in this case. There are condo owners who very much want to remain in that community, including a blind girl whose parents bought it for her so that she could live independently in a walkable neighborhood. Ow. You know, that's kind of tough. The Texas legislature, people that most of us around this horseshoe don't really support, several years ago preempted cities' ability to require 100% clauses for condo and townhouse. So this project is taking advantage of a stripping away of property rights that the legislature shoved down homeowners' throats a few sessions ago. Now, if that sounds like I'm being harsh with the applicant, I hope it doesn't. Lincoln, one of the reasons this thing has been so difficult is Lincoln is that credible developer that tells the truth, that really tries to make a sensitive, context-sensitive development. Obviously, they need to make money. All developers do, but they're listening to what the neighbors are saying. They are offering an extraordinary level of affordability in the project, and I know in my brain that this project is not right for this parcel at this time, but it doesn't make me feel good to tell my friends at Lincoln that this project that they've worked on for a long time is a no-go. But that's the way it is for right now. As we discussed, Jeff, this may be a situation where your investors will wind up in the future having educated everyone about what really should be here and then won't profit from it themselves, and I'm sorry about that. But this is going to take a lot. If there is ever going to be a zoning change on this parcel, and I don't know that there will be, it is going to take a lot more thought, a lot more community engagement, and a lot more effort. And there's another potential lesson here. In zoning, people frequently, for rhetorical purposes, argue to ad absurdum, or whatever it is, where you argue that everything in the future will reflect the decision made today. Zoning legally is not precedent setting, and there's a reason for that. It's because sometimes the fact that there's a Taylor a block and a half away is a reason there shouldn't be higher, taller development on this site, because the preservation of that variation in form is healthy for the neighborhood as well. That's frustrating for owners who are looking to profit off of a speculative investment, but for people who live there, it's probably a good thing. And so that may be another lesson to learn from this process this time. But in terms of the advocates on both sides, I really, really respect all of you. You don't know really the level of sophistication that you are displaying to this council. And I mean that sincerely to both Lincoln and to the opponents. You're both very dear to me, and I'm sorry that not everybody can get everything they want all the time. If I were some kind of perfect politician, I'd figure out how to do that, but I can't. So thank you for the little bit of extra time, Mr. Mayor. Please, if you all will please join me in allowing Lincoln to clean up whatever it needs to with a non-prejudicial denial to allow them to do whatever deal cleanup needs to be done, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments? I guess I have a question. Are you voting to deny the 15% affordable housing?
Mr. Mayor, what I meant to say was I moved to adopt the recommendation of the CPC to deny without prejudice.
With 15% affordable housing?
The 15% affordable housing does not change my motion.
Okay. And what if they gave the young lady a free apartment that's blind?
I think you're still 90 units short, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify. Let's do a record vote. If you are voting,
can I have a question?
Just be clear. Do you want to say something?
So, do we have that? I saw that they were willing to put 15% on the table, but there's not an option for that. I mean, nobody's made a motion.
He said even with the 15%, he's not for it. Okay.
So even if they're 15%,
I guess I have to comment. I mean, we have an affordable housing crisis in this city. And this is a moment of truth whether we're going to put affordable housing north of this city or not. And I respect all the points of view, just like Mr. Kingston said. But when we said we're going backwards and we're going to have to include affordable housing, that is not a good narrative for this city. And so I will be voting against the motion because I think affordable housing is critical throughout this city, and it needs to get in North Dallas. Whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. And we've got to start someplace, and this is a good opportunity to do that. So that's my point of view. Ms. Gates, did I cut you off?
Yeah, I had another question because the certainty over zoning is a question that comes up all over the city, and I spoke with both sides and I met with both sides on this issue. And there was this argument that this area is like a protected MF2. And if, that, and that's a certainty, but why, in this, because it's a special district, but I think there's been, in I don't know how many cases over the last few years that MF2 has been changed to MF3 in this special district. I mean, maybe, could you, Neva, maybe give me an estimate of how many times that has happened? And from you've worked with a lot of cases in this special district, has it been argued that this area within that district is protected? I mean, is it from any kind of zoning change?
I couldn't even hazard a guess to know how many have gone from MF to PDS or something. But if you look in your history, most of the ones that are listed here were either office or light commercial. The ones that changed around this area were not MF2.
They weren't in that immediate area. So there hasn't been, but it's just been kind of known. I mean, within the group. I mean, I'm just trying to understand it a little bit better of why. Is there no plan then for it to change at all? Is there any plans for it to be protected? Is there an authorized? I know there's an authorized hearing with NPD 193. Is that for this area or not?
No, it's for an MF3 area. So, I mean, from staff's perspective, we look at each case individually. So just whether this is MF2 or LC or office, we look at each one individually and determine whether we think this area needs to change.
And what was your staff recommendation?
Our staff recommendation was approval, but with different conditions than what the applicant asked for.
Because what were you trying to mitigate?
We were asking for, staff recommendation, was denial without prejudice, but we provided some conditions in here for what staff would have supported as an alternative if anybody wanted to support it.
And so did they support?
Right. So CPC went, I'm sorry, I just said that wrong. Staff was...
Yeah, the applicants are all shaking their heads. So I'm just want to clear what...
Staff was recommending approval. We had conditions that were less in height, less density, different setbacks, and a different recommendation for the affordable housing, which they have now increased.
Which now they have, because this is something we're looking to do. Right. So if there's areas that we can have density, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Neva or Chris, if you could come up for a second. Thank you. I'm looking at the information we were given, and based on this information, it says that the opposition presented a number of recommended changes, and the applicant developer met those concerns. Are you familiar with that? Is that correct?
Right. So this case started in March of last year. It has been gone through different iterations from when it first started. Those have come from both staff and the opposition's input. That's what the applicant has reacted to as to make their changes. And so there is a change, a little bit of change from when they first started to what they're asking for now.
Okay. The reason I asked that question is, if that's correct, kind of seems like a little moving of the goalpost. I mean, if you say, okay, we're in opposition and these are our concerns, and they go back and say, okay, we're willing to meet those, and then you meet those and they say, well, now these are our concerns. You know, if it's a case where you just flat out didn't want it, I think that should have been stated from the beginning. And I'm basing that on the information that I have here and information that I've been given. And so that's a cause for concern, simply because of the fact that I wouldn't want someone to say these are the things that bother me, or things that I have a problem with. Would you make these changes? And they make those changes, and it's not good enough. So I just wanted to get your understanding on this in terms of the history of this case and what's going on. So.
Yeah, so the applicant never met either side all the way. They did compromise and came down a little bit on the height and the number of units. So there was a little bit of movement from the applicant side.
And I didn't see anywhere in here where the opposition recommended or asked for the 15% affordable units. Was that something that the applicant offered or volunteered to do?
Right. So staff had recommended 10%, I believe, and the applicant has now, since CPC come, they were offering 5, now they're offering 15.
Okay.
Right. But I believe the opposition would like no change. So there wouldn't be that play of the affordable.
Right. Well, we sit around here, week after week, and we discuss, the fact that we don't want to continue to put, affordable housing in the areas, recap areas. This is a high opportunity area. And if the developer is willing to go exceed the 10% and go as far as 15%, I mean, at some point in time, NIMBYism's got to stop somewhere. We've got to recognize the fact that we don't want to continue to overpopulate certain areas that already have high poverty. And if there is an opportunity to provide individuals, as we say, the working poor, an opportunity to live somewhere close to where they work, I think this appears to me to be one of those opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Think about it. This is an uptown. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's uptown, right? And I remember back in 1968, uptown was all African American almost. It was almost affordable, and now that it's not. As chair of housing and economic development, you know, I do understand both sides, and I wish it was a mixed crowd out there. Workforce housing, we're trying to get people to work downtown, and we said we don't get affordable opportunity. You know, it's kind of puzzling me, and I've been saying ever since 2006, tale of two cities, north and the south. It is a tale of two cities. Everybody have a right to live where they should live in America, but we started with 10% and 15%, and could I address Mr. Kingston, please?
Please.
Mr. Kingston, suppose I offer 25%, would that still be off the table?
Mr. Atkins, math is very difficult.
I just asked.
Math is very difficult.
I just asked. Yes or no?
25% is how many? Do you know?
How many units you want?
It's
how many
it's,
they have?
it's 60 units, Mr. Atkins. Do you know how many affordable units are there today?
There are 100, I believe.
Let me.
Well,
I like asking questions, but not
math
for
is
debate.
Really difficult,
I just
sir.
asked a simple question. Yes or
no,
no?
you're being quite insulting.
Okay.
We don't need any of your
All right.
help here.
Mr. Atkins, go ahead.
Thank you for your answer. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. But 25% of zero is zero, I guess. But we all talking about workforce housing. We're talking about people to be able to work, live and work in a part of the city. We got business people downtown who drive there, who try to get to work, and they pay 30% of their income in transportation. That's poverty in the city of Dallas. We just heard on Martin Luther King Celebration Day about how do we grow this city, how do we work together, and how do we compromise, and how do we work. That's what I'm talking about. There's always room to negotiate, to sit down, to come up with a great answer. And I thought the city is a great city to work together, to come up, to be equal in the entire city of Dallas. And we say we do need workforce housing, affordable housing downtown. Eventually we're going to get there. But I don't want to be voting against it. And if you come back, you know, hey, as chair of housing, the policy, the city manager, we got to look more deeply into our housing policy to be a great city. We got to really search our heart and say, do we really, really want affordable housing throughout the city of Dallas, especially in North Dallas and especially downtown? Thank you.
Mr. Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find the preceding remarks from my colleagues to be ridiculous, foolish, fraudulent. Raise your hand if you have approved more affordable housing in your district than we have in District 14. I don't believe you're correct, Mr. Kleinman. I believe you're under 15 units, and I think I'm over 100. So this affordable housing was never part of the discussion.
Okay, Mr. Kleinman.
I mean, if he's going to call me out,
I know, but just put the light. Put your light on.
You're the liar, dude.
Hey, Mr. Kingston, we're not going to call people names.
I believe I'll do whatever I want, Mr. Mayor.
Not be in order, okay? Please.
It is, I mean, it's just facially galling. It's disingenuous. We've been trading development rights for affordable housing in District 14 for years. We've done it over and over. Many of you have voted against those deals. And to pretend that this has something to do with NIMBYism, to call my neighbors who are sitting right here NIMBYs, that is shameful. That is not behavior consistent with being a dispassionate member of this council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Gates.
Thank you. What really resonated, and going back to this question, I would like to ask Mr. Kingston, this district, the idea and that this is kind of protected MF2, is that the vision you see for this area? That's the most justified reason to me that you would deny the zoning. What's supposed to be there? Should it just remain MF2? Is that what you see for this, kind of blocked area that's been highlighted? Could I ask you that?
I don't have a overarching vision for this property. The idea that there's a special protection beyond normal protections for this property is not really reflected in law. It's reflected in the way that PD 193 has been operated traditionally. There's only one trailside MF2 project that's ever been upzoned, I believe. And that one, as you were here, you may have recalled how close I was to being beaten to death over that project. So I would say that what we know from this case is that this vision presented this way at this time is not viable. It doesn't mean that another vision in the future won't be viable. Is that enough of an answer?
That's helpful. I mean, just because that area, I think the certainty is something that we hear constantly in all of our districts. And and I know zoning can always change, but the argument was made, and I think with the Vine, people weren't going to invest in there because they assumed something else was not supported, that it wouldn't change. And I think it's not good for our city when we don't know, and then there's areas where we can have density, and with density we can have affordability, and our city can continue to grow. But if we know there's areas that's not going to be supported, we should just say that out front and not make developers go round and round for 3 years and make neighbors have to get coalitions to work for 3 years. So that's what the kind of boiling point of the frustration is, why we ended up here after 3 years.
Thank you. I just want to make one last. Well, Mr. Callahan wants to speak. No, please.
Yeah, that's what's my concern, is that we've been at this 2 or 3 years, and if the answer was no to begin with, why are we getting planners and loggers and bringing visions and then saying, well, we don't like this, we don't like that? I mean, it's clear there's been changes. It's going from $25 million to $100 million value. You're going from 90 feet down to 70 feet. Your units are going 390 down to 307. You're getting a better setback look. You're getting great access to the Katy Trail. You're burying the power lines. There's a great deal to like about this. And then they've upped the ante on the affordability ratio. You're going from 5 to 15%. The math that Mr. Atkins was trying to get to, is 25%. That's 77 units. At the 15%, that's 46 units. So that does certainly help. And you're getting brand new product, more tax value to the city so they can bring more services. You got brand new construction under warranty. Again, there's so many things to like about this, and certainly in that given vicinity, high-rise buildings have been for the last 30, 40 years have been really the norm. You've got to add value. Property taxes are high and property insurance is high. The developers got to get more return, ROI on their investment. And to do that, you got to put up more units. But more units is good because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more affordable units. And so again, rather than going down the primrose path, taking developers for a ride, if you will, suggesting that a certain workout could be made, I'd rather just let your yes be yes, your no be no. If you just don't want it, then say, we do not want any change from the MF2, and that's the end of discussion. Don't tell somebody that if you'll make these ancillary changes, then we might be able to get some support for that. So, loggers and planners and architects, and this has been revised I don't know how many times, that's expensive. So let's end the expense. Let's add the value for the city. Let's bring the affordability, units online, and let the city and let the people win. Thank you.
Thank you. The last point that I just wanted to say is Mr. Thomas talked about these high opportunity areas, and we have never had a project with 15% affordable housing in a high opportunity area. We've talked about raising the standard, raising the bar. This would create a new standard for all builders in the future, And to me, it really comes back to Mr. Atkins' questions. Does this council really want affordable housing? So we'll have a record vote. If you want to vote for denial, you vote yes, or you can vote no to that.
We have higher actual rates of affordability in high opportunity areas in other projects in Mr. McHugh's district and in mine.
In 15%?
We have 40 in Jack Matthews' new deal.
Okay, that's up and running. Okay, thank you. All right, vote.
Please start voting. 10 have voted. 13 have voted. 14 have voted. 14 have voted. 14 have voted. 14 have voted. All have voted. Voting in favor, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Medrano, Council Members Clayton, Narvaez, Kingston, Grayson, and Griggs. Voting against, Council Members McHugh, Arnold, Mayor Pro Tem Thomas, Councilmember Gates, Felder, Kleiman, Mayor Rollins, Councilmember Callahan, and Atkins. The motion fails, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll entertain another motion, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the zoning changes requested by the applicant with the following changes. In order to qualify for the increased development standards, a minimum 15% of the total dwelling units must be mixed income housing. The rental affordability period is 15 years beginning on the date the first affordable unit is leased to an eligible household or voucher holder, and the ordinance to return at a later date.
Thank you. Do we have a second? A second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a record vote.
Please start voting. I would like to know for passage or approval, it will require 12 members voting in favor. 11 have voted. 12 have voted. 12 have voted. 13 have voted. 14 have voted.
Sorry, I thought
All have voted. Voting in favor, Council Members McHugh, Arnold, Mayor Pro Tem Thomas, Councilmember Gates, Felder, Kleiman, Clayton, Mayor Rollins, Councilmember Callahan, and Councilmember Atkins. Voting against, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Medrano, Councilmembers Narvaez, Kingston, Grayson, and Griggs. The motion also fails, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we have two motions fail. Does anybody want to make a motion to send it back to CPC? Anybody? Anybody want to do anything?
I'll move that we send it back to CPC, and perhaps we can get a little bit more affordable housing and maybe make some tweak adjustments to placate the neighbors and try to get a victory for the city.
Okay. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Callahan, did you want to say something?
No.
Mr. Kingston is up first.
I would urge you all to vote against Mr. Callahan's motion. As I hopefully highlighted, the biggest resource that has been utilized in this case is volunteer time. This is hundreds of neighbors coming out to literally, we're up to 10 official on the record meetings and dozens of other meetings in the community. And this is the kind of thing that causes neighbors to think that people in this building who want to give developers a win will simply wear them out by requiring them to come back to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. I mean, thank God this is a night meeting and they didn't all have to take off work. So if it goes back to CPC, it's going to come back to us as a denial again. We'll have another meeting like this, and it'll still require 12 votes. It's still not going to get built. So this is an exercise in two things: delaying the inevitable and wearing out my neighbors.
Mr. Kleiman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I have some staff questions about sending it back to CPC because I got to concur with my colleague, Mr. Kingston. The CPC does not want to see this again. So I guess my question is, if we send it back to CPC, do they have to have a full hearing again? We just tell them to go through the process again?
Correct. We would notice, just like we did for the first one, and see if there's any changes from the applicant, or if there were, we could bring those forward to CPC, but we'd have a new hearing.
If we reconsidered Mr. Kingston's first motion for denial without prejudice, where does that leave the applicant?
Denial without prejudice means they can make a new application tomorrow.
Make a new application. So
They don't have the 2-year waiting period.
So they start over, still have to go through CPC.
Right.
So is it virtually the same outcome? I mean, I realize technically it's a different thing, but they still have to go through the same process again.
Sure. I think a denial gives the applicant the indication that this wasn't the right product to bring forward, so go back and think about something else.
Right, and then if we send it back to CPC, they're just going to
It's the exact
gyrate on
same.
the same issue over and over
Correct.
again. All right.
Thank you. Ms. Arnold.
Excuse me, the question for Ms. Neva Dean, excuse me, need clarification that I would not be in favor of sending it back to CPC, but addressing the issue of how we can move it forward with, we can consider keeping this under advisement until it can come back to the council agenda so that we could vote on it.
So the council could vote, or could make a motion to hold this under advisement to a date certain. It would not go back to Plan Commission. It would just stay here and come back before this body.
All right, then I would need to get some help in drafting that, so that I would like to present that motion. Not the motion that I've just solicited from Mrs. Neva Dean, to put that forward to council to hold it under advisement so it can come back. So I don't know if that's the proper term for me to use.
Yeah, it is, and that's fine. You just need a date. We got to take up Mr. Callahan's motion first. I will say that CPC did not act on this when it was 15% affordable housing. That is a new piece of information that I think our CPC group would be interested in. Mr. Callahan, did you want to?
I had a question. Would someone from Lincoln Properties address the group and indicate what they're interested in doing? Do you want to make a new application? Do you want to walk away? What do you want to do?
Please.
We'd love to have the opportunity to make a new application, and I think it'd be in our best interest to go back to CPC whether they want to see it or not. And the reason why is if we get a positive vote, which it was only 7-5, then we don't have to have a supermajority here.
Well, the point is we could choose Mr. Kingston's route with just denial without prejudice and you can go make that application tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's one avenue. Or you can accept mine. It's going to take you down the same. You tell me.
I think that it makes sense for us to be referred back. That gives them the indication that you guys are interested in seeing it again.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. You have some comment?
Yes.
No. No, because a council person asked.
Mr. Mayor, if you remand this as it is, the request is as it is today. So if you want us to entertain something different, you would need to instruct staff to advertise something different. So that would need to be part of your motion. If you just remand it.
The 15% would have to be in there.
Right.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Felder, you hadn't spoken?
Yes. Sir, would you come back to the microphone, please?
Yes, sir.
This is a pretty tough case because of the number of times that you guys have been before CPC and also acknowledging the fact that the community is voicing serious concern. But my question to you is, would you consider anything above 15%?
I'd want to go back and look at it.
Yes.
You obviously have to look at a lot of math, as Mr. Kingston mentioned and Mr. Atkins mentioned. You know, there's economic cost afforded that, and I'd need to make sure that equity partners and so on were comfortable with it.
Okay, so that I think that would be beneficial. I think that would be good. That would be something that probably a lot of us would be interested in. A number at 20-25% would be appealing. I hear my colleagues, the concerns and the comments. As a real estate broker, I'd like to see more diversity throughout the city. I don't, and I pride myself on being a grassroots community-based councilman. So I want the community that has come out, I want you to know that. But sometimes, no matter what you do, many times, no matter what you do, somebody's going to be upset, somebody's going to be disappointed, somebody's going to be mad. But at the end of the day, we're trying to reach a compromise, and that's what's going to have to happen here. Nobody's going to win and get everything that they want. I clearly understand that, and I see that now. But what we need to do for this city, for this community, is to find a way to get as many affordable units as possible in the complex, so that you have a balance. You have a balance because you have opposition. You have strong opposition. I can clearly see it and hear it. But I'm seeking a balance. I'm seeking some middle ground. Some middle ground, so that there will be less acrimony, less disappointment. So please give it your strongest consideration. Thank you, sir.
We look forward to talking to all of you and getting your input.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Callahan, did you say it's not open mic, sir? They were asking him a question. Mr. Callahan, did you say you wanted to do something with your motion?
I think it might be in our best interest for me to withdraw my motion and instead consider Mr. Kingston's original motion, because that allows them to go back and make a brand new application tomorrow. It just cuts to the chase and allows them to go back. If they want to bring in another component, either 15 or 20 or some other figure, they can do that.
Fine. So his motion is withdrawn. Ms. Arnold wanted to make a motion.
Could I ask a question before the
Please.
motion? There's comment number one. My understanding into the reading is that this particular project does not include any tax credits.
No.
And so the second comment, of course, when speaking to my fellow council member Felder, is correct. In trying to get compromise and balance, I believe, is the more we get.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, point of order, and this is nothing against you, Ms. Arnold, but there's no motion on the floor.
No, she's asking a question for clarification.
Right, but we have no motion on the floor, so we should only be discussing a motion on the floor at this time. I understand what you're saying, Mayor, but I'm just giving a point of order.
I was trying to answer a question.
Point of
I just did.
information, then. That would be a point of information. So my
What's your
question,
motion?
moving forward, then I would see clarity on an advisement. Would that give us a chance to get more information to council members before we vote? Is that what that would include, that period? Or is that do the attorneys need to ask that question? No, to get my motion, I'm asking for advisement.
You can say you want a motion to defer to a certain date.
Basically, yes. I just want to get clarity on the advisement period.
Grab a date and make the motion if that's what you want. Do you have a date?
Sir, let me just try to put on my glasses so I can hear. I think this is just kind of one of those periods of night where it's like there's so much going on. So if I want to be supportive of the developer and I want to move forward on this project so we're not straggling out for 4 more years. So my recommendation, we could vote it up or down, would be to put this on advisement, come back at the end of February. Would that be February the 28th, I believe?
27th.
27th.
There's a council meeting on the 27th? There we go. We've got a motion. Do we have a second? We've got a second. Motion and a second. So the motion is to move for deferral till the 27th. Okay? We'll be discussing that. Ms. Arnold, any comments? Your light's done. Thank you. Mr. Kingston.
Point of information, Mayor. This motion, we're just bringing back the exact same motion back on the 27th? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Kingston.
Which makes she bring it back?
She's saying to take this item and defer it till the 27th, since we did not.
We've already voted this item.
Yeah, that
Well, I
was
know,
sober.
but we did not get any conclusion. There was no conclusion.
Conclusion, which was, is that, what?
She can make that motion, okay? Since no motion has passed, she can make that motion, okay? All right, Mr. Kingston.
There are two legal reasons why this would take a supermajority to pass. Instead of talking about the legal reasons, let's talk about the meritorious reasons. There's overwhelming opposition to this project. Don't fool yourself. If you vote to approve this project, you are voting against. I have not seen a level of written opposition in terms of ballots returned, both compared to the ones in favor and compared to the total ballots sent out, maybe ever. This is incredibly strong written opposition. If you are of the mind to tell yourself that those people don't know what's best for their neighborhood for whatever reason, they were deceived, they're not smart, whatever, I think they hear you. I think they're sitting out there and I think they hear you. Let's talk about the legal reasons, though. One is the overwhelming written opposition, the ballots that were returned, and the other is the negative vote of CPC. So, for instance, if Lincoln were to return to CPC and somehow manage to talk a plan commissioner into flipping his or her vote, perhaps with some help from the direct orders of council members, I've heard that's happened from time to time, then it would still return here needing a supermajority to pass. If Ms. Arnold delays this for a period of time and it comes back, it will still need a supermajority to pass. And, your crystal ball is as good as mine, colleagues, so don't let this sound like I'm telling you what's going to happen. But it seems to me the outcome will be the same. I urge you to conserve the energy of the parties at this point. I am re-urging my motion to adopt the CPC recommendation of denial without prejudice, giving Lincoln the maximum flexibility. If you guys let this die with no motion passing, it can't come back for 2 years. And that's not a good outcome. So I'm not telling you I told you so, but I think we need to go back to my original motion, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Why don't we, are we going to talk about Ms. Arnold's motion? Because her motion was deferral. We can just vote on that.
Who seconded that, by the way?
Mr. Thomas.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. He said to go back to his original one, which we voted on.
I re-urge my motion to adopt the CPC recommendation of denial without prejudice.
Yeah. But we've already voted on that.
So we have to vote on hers.
Are you going to call people in order? Because we've had a lot of conversation right
I
here. I've
was
been waiting
just
patiently.
asking. I got it. I am. Okay. And Mr. Kleiman, you're up next.
Motion for reconsideration.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So help me. Do we need to take up
got
Ms.
another
Arnold's
one.
before the reconsideration? Reconsideration first. All vote on reconsideration. He voted against Mr. Kingston's. Okay.
And prevailed.
All right. And so he's asking for a reconsideration.
Of that vote, so that potentially we could vote on Mr. Kingston's motion again, so that we could just deny without prejudice and they can come back.
Okay. All right. Let's vote on that. Okay.
Please start voting. 10 have voted. 12 have voted. 13 have voted. 14, all have voted. Voting in favor, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Medrano, Council Members McHugh, Arnold, Mayor Pro Tem Thomas, Councilmember Gates, Felder, Kleiman, Clayton, Narvaez, Kingston, Callahan, Griggs, Grayson, and Atkins. Voting against, Mayor Rollins. The motion passes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Then we will reconsider, right? Because Mr. Kingston. So let's vote on that.
Please start voting.
Without.
Denial without prejudice. 9 have voted. 12 have voted. 13 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 have voted. 14 have voted. All have voted. Voting in favor, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Medrano, Councilmembers Arnold, Thomas, Gates, Felder, Kleiman, Clayton, Narvaez, Kingston, Callahan, Grayson, Griggs. Voting against, Councilmembers McGue, Mayor Rollins, and Councilmember Atkins. The motion passes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We will take up item 39.